Morning, friends. It's such a delight for me to be here as part of this wonderful event. I want to compliment CLAFMA of India for organizing this program. And it's such a delight to see a large number of people gathering here in-person meeting. And for me, this is the first large in-person meeting that I'm addressing in the last 18 months or so. Thank you very much. Allow me to flag some key highlights of the OECD FAO report that was published in the month of July. And some of these points need to sink into the industry participants here, the compound livestock feed industry, feed manufacturers, participants here, primarily because we are, by and large, over a period of time, going to mimic what's happening around the world, particularly in the developing markets. So let's quickly have a look at this. The pattern of global consumption is evolving towards higher share of animal products in diets, which is very clear as incomes start increasing, as population starts to expand. This is a trend which we are all witness to this trend. And therefore, higher and higher, bigger quantities of crops are now being used for the animal agriculture sector. More important, maize and protein meal, as all of us know, have always been an important feed material for this industry, and they will continue to play their important role as feed commodities. In fact, the OECD says 60% of the total feed by 2030, that's 10 years from now, 9 years from now, 60% of the total feed will be accounted for by maize and protein meal. Then we have the feed demand for maize globally set to grow up by 1.4%, and for protein meal by 1.2%. In our country, it will be much faster. These are global numbers, please remember. And then demand growth for protein meal is projected to slow. Over the next 10 years or so, demand for protein meal is projected to slow, primarily because of lower protein meal share in feed rations in the European Union and, of course, in China. And China is expected to use more of maize in its feed mix. These are observations made by the OECD. These are not my observations. And this is a kind of global trend that we are going to witness. The next one, let me continue to talk about the OECD FAO report, is that the global meat consumption very clearly is shifting towards poultry. This is a trend which appears to be unstoppable for various reasons. We are moving from animal meat to poultry meat globally again. And then this reflects primarily the great benefits and advantages of poultry. This is not something I'm saying because I don't like animal meat or I like poultry meat or whatever. But these trends are visible and these trends are going to continue, and these are the views of the OECD. And this reflects obviously lower poultry prices, particularly in developing countries, low-income developing countries. And we are living in times in India today, poultry demand is going up very, very rapidly, as we know very, very clearly. And therefore, in developing countries like India, demand for meat, animal meat, is highly price elastic. And therefore, consumers will go for that meat, whether it's animal meat or poultry meat. They will go for that meat which suits their pocket. Okay? And that's why, because poultry meat appears to be cheaper, I think they'll obviously be going towards poultry meat. And as incomes recover, obviously, when incomes recover, people have greater propensity to spend more and more money on food, and particularly value-added foods, etc. And therefore, demand will recover. Now, poultry meat, according to the OECD, will represent as much as 41% of all the protein from meat sources in 2030. 40% of protein sources will be represented by meat alone by 2030, which is very important. And because consumers are attracted to lower and lower prices, and then you have product consistency and you have higher protein, lower fat, fat content. I think these are significant pointers to where this market in India is going to go over the next 10 years or so. Then let me talk about some of the challenges. Given these challenges, I see that poultry industry is going to score. Okay, disease outbreaks, sanitary restrictions, trade policies, all these are going to affect. And we are seeing all this affecting even already, but these are going to affect the evolution and dynamics of the world meat market. Poultry is in a vantage position to be able to meet these challenges more quickly than the animal meat industry. Poultry can respond more quickly to market signals due to shorter production cycle. This is what the OECD has observed. And as compared with ruminant meat, poultry industry is able to manage these risks in a much shorter time frame. An improvement in genetics, animal health, and feeding practices can change more quickly than for ruminants in case of poultry, and therefore that's an advantage. And therefore, as poultry expands and the ruminant part of the animal agriculture starts to slow down, global emissions obviously are going to slow, because we all know livestock industry emits, there are huge greenhouse gas emissions, which is a big challenge for the whole world. The US and Europe are all fighting and thinking about how best to reduce these gas emissions through the livestock sector. And in fact, there was only yesterday I read in the US, they have now got very specific toilets. They are training young animals for toilet. It's called potty training or toilet training, and they have something called moo loo, which is potty training for young cattle. All that's happening to contain greenhouse gas emissions. Okay. Now, having said all this, which are the observations of the OECD, let us come very quickly to India's production trends. Okay, I've got milk, I've got eggs, and we've got meat. I think that's meat. Okay, you can see very clearly how this industry has been expanding so rapidly. 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. I'm not reading the numbers. The numbers are all in front of you. And then the projection 2 years from now, 22, 23, milk production at 235 million tons, eggs at 136 billion. Today it is 114. Today, when I say today, 2021 or 1920, and in 22, 23, 136. And meat production is expected, overall, total meat production is expected to touch 6.2 million tons. I think this is a fantastic growth that this industry is going to witness. Then let's go to, very quickly, current and emerging scenarios. Okay. Now, animal health, dairy, fisheries. The average growth rate in the last 5 years till 2020 was 8.6%. Massive, fantastic growth rate, much beyond, well above the national GDP growth rate. And this trend, in my view, is likely to accelerate over the next few years, certainly in this decade. And similarly, in case of livestock census, the total milk cattle population was up by more than 10% to 74.6 million by 2019. This trend, the increase in milk cattle is also going to accelerate very, very rapidly. Strong growth in dairy production and feed intensification, that is going to lead to a 2.4% feed demand growth over the next 10 years till 2030. And then, of course, the protein meal demand in India will rise by 3% per annum next 10 years. And India will certainly move towards compound feed-based livestock production. I think these trends are, in my view, unmistakable, and these trends are going to influence the fortunes of this industry. Now, the topic given to me is sustainable animal feed market, and then I have some thoughts to share. Now, what I want to mention is the animal agriculture has been growing, and it actually enjoys tremendous potential. I'm sure Balram and others spoke about the potential for the future. If you are in this business as usual mood, you will still grow. Even if you don't want growth, you will grow. But that is business as usual. But if you're going to disrupt the situation, you will grow probably at 2 times, 2x. Okay, and therefore you should start thinking about, should I continue with this business as usual, or should I disrupt this system and move to a higher scale, which will obviously be a win-win for the entire industry. And therefore, when we talk of sustainable feed market, we also have to realize that this industry, all of us in any given system, we are as good as the ecosystem that we have inherited. All of us, that is, this industry is working in a legacy ecosystem. And that legacy ecosystem allows you to do business as usual. You need to disrupt it and then take it to a higher level. And therefore, when you want to have a sustainable animal feed market, you also need to have a sustainable animal agriculture ecosystem. That's very important. Now, what are the parameters of this sustainable animal agriculture ecosystem is a very different conversation, which maybe we can have some other time. But that is required, and in my view, that is not available today. Therefore, we need to think of what would constitute a sustainable animal agriculture ecosystem, but for which we need to look at technology, we need to look at services, we need to look at standards, we need to look at regulation, etc. And therefore, sustainable animal feed market, which is a topic given to me, sustainable animal feed market has to be certainly a part of the sustainable animal agriculture ecosystem. And therefore, this legacy ecosystem in which the industry is operating is delivering, of course, but if we want delivery of multiple times benefits for the industry, I think we need to bring some kind of disruption to the current ecosystem. Now, the American Feed Industry Association's definition is this. This is what is their view of what is sustainability and sustainable feed market. Anyway, I'm not reading that. I'm sure my presentation is going to be available, and I'm also racing against time. Let me go to the next slide. Okay. Now let's look at the challenges. The challenges for as far as raw material for feed is concerned. One, in India, and then now we are talking about India, land constraints. We have 16 to 17% of the world's population sitting here, but we have only 3% of the world's land resources. Therefore, land is going to be under severe constraint, whether it is oil seeds or coarse grains or rice or wheat or cotton, take any big major crop, cultivated crop. I suspect the acreage available for planting is reaching now a saturation point. Okay? And therefore, land constraints are very soon going to kick in. If they have not already kicked in, they'll kick in very soon. Same with water shortage. And we have been talking about water shortage for the last 15 years. And then there are any number of reports, including something from the Niti Aayog a couple of years ago. Serious water shortage. And therefore, this is going to be a big challenge. Already we know several pockets, several regions in this country are very highly water stressed. Climate change, I think much has been talked about climate change. As a tropical nation, India is a tropical country, and as a tropical nation, we are a lot more vulnerable to the adverse effects of global warming and climate change. And we are beginning to feel, we are beginning to witness the adverse effects of global warming and climate change, and we can't wish it away. It is a risk, and then we should learn to manage that risk. And then low yields of crop is something we know. 30 or 35 years ago, when I first entered the oilseeds industry, I was told one of the big problems is low yields. 35 years later, I still continue to hear the same thing. Low yields of whether it's soybean or groundnut or rapeseed mustard or whatever. And therefore, we are 50% of the world average. Okay, therefore, we haven't done much to, our production has expanded merely because of our increase in acreage, which is now coming to a saturation point. So we need vertical growth. For low yields of crop, policy constraints. I think our policy, our overall, whether it is particularly the import-export policy, has got to be a lot more liberal. And therefore, I think that's going to be a big challenge. And of course, lack of technology infusion. We need to infuse agriculture with multiple technologies, not just biotechnology, but also information technology, satellite technology, nuclear agriculture technology, nanotechnology, drones, whatever. Multiple technologies have a role to play in addressing this challenge. And then we go to the challenges facing the Indian feed market stakeholders. What are the challenges you're facing? Primarily uncertainty of raw material, feed availability, feed affordability, and feed accessibility. Availability, affordability, accessibility. Then you have feed price volatility, as Anupam showed, as Prerna showed in the morning, how volatile prices are, and how are you going to face, how are you going to de-risk yourself. Then demand fluctuation. There are seasonal factors as far as demand is concerned. The policy environment. Do you have an adequately supportive policy environment? This is something all of us have to think about. And most important is, I believe, plant protein impact on meat demand. Things like Beyond Meat, of course, which Balram showed in his presentation. Pea protein is becoming a big market in the United States and in Europe. And it's not going to take much time for pea protein to come into India. We already know of texturized soy protein. It has not worked in India for whatever reason. But possibly there could be a renewed attempt to promote texturized soy protein in line with the protein from pulses, pea protein, etc. I think these are challenges that the industry must recognize. Then what are my suggestions? What are the possible solutions? The first one is the industry, the trade, the feed manufacturers, animal feed manufacturers need assured availability and access to feed. That's the primary requirement. And therefore, I would strongly urge the industry to please start looking at establishing backward linkages. Why should you depend on anybody else for supplies? I think if you were to enter into contract farming, and there is now a legal framework available. I did contract farming of cotton 20 years ago when there was no legal framework available. India's first private sector initiative in contract farming in cotton, and it worked quite successfully. We could not scale it up for certain reasons, but that's another story altogether. For I think the industry must start looking at contract farming very, very clearly, establish backward linkages particularly for maize and soybean, work with farmer-producer companies. You don't have to meet 200 individual farmers. Work with one FPO, which would represent a few hundred farmers. Therefore, it will be much easier to work with an organization, a company, which is a farmer-producer company, because that also gives them scale economies. Okay, and the prices. There are techniques. The contract prices can actually be based on the relevant futures prices. In fact, there is something called an on-call contract. This on-call contract used to be popular in India in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And of course, in the mid-60s, the futures market was banned. Derivatives trading was banned. And therefore, I think you should practice on-call contract where you decide a premium in advance, but decide the price of the material much later, probably closer to harvest or closer to delivery time, based again on the futures price on an exchange. It will need a little bit of explanation, but I don't have time. I'll need a few more minutes to complete. But we can have that discussion probably on some other occasion. The next suggestion that I want to talk about is managing feed price volatility. Please, I think you must seriously look at using the derivatives contract through the commodity futures exchange. I think it is important. A lot of people still seem to think 20 years after we launched the futures market that hedging is speculation. Hedging is not speculation. If you don't hedge, you are actually speculating. Not hedging is speculation. You're speculating on the market prices by not hedging. Therefore, I think hedging is one sure way of managing your raw material price volatility. Because with hedging, you can lock in your profits. Okay, that's extremely important. Scientific, time-tested method. And you can also look at delivery-based forward contract. It should end up in compulsory delivery. I think there are ways available to ensure that the contract you have entered into ends up in delivery and you take delivery of the material when the contract matures. And more important, use technology for supply chain management to build efficiency in the supply chain management, to study customer behavior, use, for example, blockchain technology in your import and export trade, etc. For technology is going to play a very significant role in supply chain management and in this whole ecosystem of animal agriculture. And of course, last but not the least, you need to build resilience. Now, the big question you will ask is how to build resilience. Again, I mean, that's a very different conversation. We can have that conversation some other time, but you need to build resilience against future shocks. Now, there are some challenges, and I want to show you one key table, probably it's after this, India's nutrition security challenge and the role of animal protein industry. We know that there is pervasive undernutrition in our country. Widespread protein deficiency, particularly in the rural areas. And therefore, here is an industry which produces a lot of protein, animal protein. Let me emphasize on the word animal, because you also have plant protein, animal protein, and as many as 70% of India's population is always ready and willing to consume meat or animal protein. Only thing is, all several decades we have not had access to. It was not affordable and there was no access. But now things are changing. We are in a new India. We are not in the 50s, 60s and 70s. There is no shortage. And therefore, I'm sure the demand is going to grow and there'll be new consumers coming into the market. But animal protein is prohibitive in terms of cost, which I'll show in my next slide. I'll need 2-3 minutes. Because you said 30 minutes for me, it's only 20 minutes now, okay? Now, the question is, can animal protein compete with plant protein? Let me please see this table. I have taken the average protein content of various, first 3 are animal protein, last 3 are plant protein. And I've taken the average price. These are indicative, okay? Don't pin me down on these very specific prices. Indicative prices. And then I've looked at protein in terms of rupees per 100 grams of protein. What is the cost? You will find, I'm sure, animal protein is expensive. If you're going to market your product as protein, then it's definitely more expensive than plant protein. This is a challenge. How is this industry going to overcome this challenge? I just leave this thought with you, but this is something to be thought through, which is very, very important in my view. And this is perhaps the last slide, I guess, the contours of a sustainable animal feed market. Now, we need the industry as a whole needs to optimize use of resources like land and water, etc. Very responsible sourcing of raw material. I think when the feed manufacturers source raw material, they should know where it is coming from. I think there has to be traceability, and all this is going to help over a period of time. It may probably appear to be a wasteful exercise to start with, but the market is moving in a very, very different direction. Market is looking at these issues and ensure a safe and nutritious product, which is very important. Today, the manufacturers take the raw material, whatever is available. They need to know where it is grown, and therefore traceability becomes important. Traceability and compliance. And then the industry has to lobby. I think I'm sure Balram also mentioned, talk about lobby policymakers for an unambiguous, predictable long-term policy regime. Okay, and crisis-smart agriculture. All of us have been talking about climate-smart agriculture. I think now we need to look at not only climate-smart agriculture, but also crisis-smart agriculture. And then we need policy that would support access to raw material, as a part of which I would recommend work towards import of oil seeds. We are importing finished product called vegetable oil. A part of the vegetable oil import can be in terms of oil seeds, which will allow greater access of raw material to this industry. And last, I'm sure this is the last, my apologies, research. Research is extraordinarily important. I think this industry collectively should make up its mind and be clear about where it wants to be by 2030, 2025 and 2030. And then you need to sponsor research to look at, if I want to be at a point by 2030, what is it I need from today? Okay, I think that's extremely important. When you have demand projections for the next 10 years, then you need to ensure you need a strategy to ensure higher demand per milk cattle, ways to promote animal health and nutrition, estimate the number of layers you need, estimate the number of broilers that you need, estimate the vaccines that you need, estimate the feed demand, how feed demand will grow over the next 10 years. What are the skill needs for this industry? What kind of processing capacity is required? And how much investment is required? I think all this is something which I would think is a research priority for this industry. So thank you very much. Good luck and God bless you all. Thanks.